Hi guys, welcome back to another video. So before we actually start today's video, I wanted to talk about today's sponsor, Wingfox. So Wingfox is an online learning platform that is perfect for studying content both in the 2D and 3D art field. They include things from Blender, concept art, game art, digital painting, 3D, 2D rendering, etc. Kind of all the different things you could learn about just digital art in general. They have really talented professional instructors from all around the world ready to share their expertise with you. Also, Wingfox's community is a perfect place for you guys to kind of share and learn from one another via art. You can check out different courses on their website, and you can check out either the descriptions or even like these little introduction videos that they have for each course. And once you find a course that you like or an instructor that you like, you can purchase it. And after you have purchased the course, you have lifetime access to the course, as well as to any of the resources that the instructor has provided as well. The courses that I've already taken are super in-depth and very detailed. A lot of them have many hours put into them and are pretty much like perfectly paced for kind of like a learning environment. So I always find it very informative as well as very easy to understand. So the course that I chosen to look at was actually by Freeman, who already has about 78 hours of content ready for you to learn. I believe it's still updating, so it has about 60 hours already in of the 70 hours that is available. And I wanted to learn more about backgrounds. I'm still very much in the learning process, so bear with me, but I wanted to tackle that today. So that's what we're going to be doing later on in today's video. Thank you again for Wingfox for sponsoring today's video, and be sure to check out the coupon code in the description that they have provided for my viewers. Okay, so let's get back into the actual drawing session. So I think recently you guys have been seeing a little bit more of my kind of like preliminary sketches, which I usually do in my sketchbook. I feel a lot more comfortable sketching like traditionally rather than digitally. So for Freeman's course, I'm going to touch upon it just a little bit or reference it just a little bit, but I don't want to reference it too much that you guys don't know what the heck I'm talking about. So his course, what really drawn me into his course is actually because he goes through a whole kind of like planning phase and kind of how he arranges his references and just like general idea of how to make like backgrounds with a character that kind of depicts more of like storytelling. And I struggle both with storytelling and as well as backgrounds, so I kind of wanted to take my time to learn. But today's video is going to be more of like kind of like a little bit of what I learned versus stuff that I already know and kind of things that I already default to. But I think it's kind of like important for me to kind of like sort this out as I was working on it. So you can see that I'm doing thumbnailing traditionally, and I already have like some ideas. I wrote a little bit of notes, what he kind of described as you want to kind of have like a focal point. You should have a general sense of what your character or whatever your scene's trying to depict. So I am drawing my OC Masaki into a scene, which I wanted him to be kind of in like a forest area, kind of like picking herbs or picking like berries or something along the lines of that. And the reason being is like I've always had an idea of wanting to do almost like a mini series for him at some point. I've already done like watercolor paintings where I've drawn him with like baskets full of like gigantic flowers, as if he's like a miniature version of him. So I'm going to be working in a chibi style alongside drawing the background, and I'm going to tackle the background a little bit differently, kind of following Freeman's steps, as well as just being looser with a different kind of brush, because you guys know I like to work very soft and a little bit more kind of with like a rounder brush that can go soft and hard. But for the brush that I was using for actual painting, mostly of the background is going to be more of a horizontal kind of like straight flat brush. So that's going to be a little bit different. You can see the sun's going down. I spent a long time just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So I did have Pinterest open on my phone. So what Freeman likes to do is like he likes to kind of curate different references and then start to kind of like dissect them and to make them into one image in a way, but he's doing it in a way that's like you're mostly focusing in on the composition, which is what I'm going to be doing here. It's going to be a fairly poor attempt because I didn't spend as much time as I would have liked to doing it, but I think that's like okay. I'm going to do probably more studies like in the future anyways. So the red sketches on the right side is what I am going to be showing you guys what my attempt is at the composition of the studies that I did on the left side. So he likes to break down the references. So once you find references that kind of like fit your composition or fit the theme or the general like atmosphere or the look of what you want, he includes both like real photography plus like illustrators versions of like landscape painting or like concept sketch kind of stuff. Another thing that he does is to draw the figure how you like it and kind of just place them into the composition so you kind of understand how the character fits within the composition and stuff. So he likes to break them down into planes before tackling like each individual element, which is something like I usually don't do. I kind of like slap things in and like kind of figure things out, which is kind of like my mistake at this point. You can see I kind of put like 2 planes, so I kind of had like the sky-ish area where kind of what I wanted to be the sky, and then I have 2 other planes, and I should have thought more about the focal point in terms of making the composition, because I kind of didn't really reference the rest of my pictures that I had on the left when tackling this. I kind of just like starting digging through my brain, which is what I should have tried to avoid, because there's a lot of things I don't know how to draw and I don't know how to make things look a little bit more natural. But you know, it's a learning process, so in the future I'm probably going to take a little bit more time into the planning process if I want to make a piece work really well. This attempt, I think, like visually it looks okay. Composition's fairly weak. Color could have been better too, but I'll get into that a little bit later. So I have Masaki on the left sitting on like a log or a fallen down tree, and initially in my traditional sketches I wanted to have more of a focus on like mushrooms and stuff kind of in the foreground, and I think I lost sight of that, which I think is why like you should do preliminary sketches and kind of figure and flesh things out so you're kind of more familiar with what you want versus kind of like being super wishy-washy like how I was here. Also, I'll make sure to leave all the brushes in the description. So I believe I used a soft paint brush, which is what I usually use for general painting. And by the name of it, you can tell that it's a softer brush that I like to use for painting generally, because it's easier for me to layer up colors in such a way. But if I press a little bit harder or go over an area a little bit, I can get that kind of like sharper, more vibrant, punchier kind of shape or color that I need. But if I press lighter, I am able to gradually add in color, which kind of like acts as my blender in a way. Like it's not mixing the colors, it's kind of just like overlaying them in a soft way, so there's like a seamless transition, kind of like an airbrush in a sense. But like I said, when I'm doing the painting portion, I am going to switch to a harder brush. Yeah, I switched up Masaki's pose as well. So I have him bent one leg in, one leg kind of touching the water area, and he's kind of just like munching on a snack, just sitting on the log. And he does do more like color comps and value studies prior to doing like color and stuff, or like even just getting to rendering. But for me, the fun part of painting for me is just details and color. So I kind of feel like I cheated my way to get there. So I did try to do a value study, and he does go through a bunch of different patterns of light, how they hit like the surfaces and stuff. And obviously if you want a more atmospheric background, the background will be much more lighter and gradually getting very like pale, much more like atmospheric. And as you get closer to your camera or like the person viewing it, I guess is that how you explain it? The foreground, I guess, it gets a lot darker and a lot more clearer. So I was trying to make sure to keep that in mind, because sometimes I do get into that area of making things in the foreground a lot brighter than things in the background, and a lot of the time it doesn't really make sense if it's more of an atmospheric background you're trying to achieve. So I did do a little bit of just trying to figure out the lighting, a little bit of the rendering, and I was just checking to see if it worked. And once I was done with the values, I kind of wanted to plan out the coloring a little bit. I've seen a lot of people do this actually, and I would like to play around with this in the future, maybe in a different video, but I don't think I fully understand how to manipulate the colors in such a way that looks a little bit more natural. So I know a lot of people would change their grayscale into color by overlaying or using multiply, using screens, and all that on top of their already rendered kind of more finished grayscale or value study. And I think that's a good way to like not focus on color and focus just on shapes, focus on depth, focus on value. So I think that's a good way to do it, but I don't know why. Maybe I just didn't spend enough time. Actually, I think I know why. I was on a call with my friends while doing this entire piece, so I definitely wasn't in the right headspace technically, and I tried my best to cut out as many pauses as I could, because I did pause a lot because I was like gesturing to my friends because we're on a video call and all that. But I decided to just paint everything in kind of more manually, by, eyeballing colors, trying to figure out what I like and what I don't like. And usually in the end, because I'm working digitally, I do have the luxury of being able to edit the color as I'm working. So usually even after I place a lot of the colors that I think I like, I can adjust it with the multiply layer, overlays, addition, and all that to kind of get the proper lighting or colors that I prefer. And I do fall in the trap of making things, I think, too vibrant and maybe too high contrast for the lighting might be a little bit too intense. So is this like things for me to keep note that might not be too helpful for you guys? I'm not too sure. I think like I might be tailoring it too much to what I prefer or what I notice that I tend to do, which might not apply to everyone, but maybe a few of you guys. So I wanted to draw Masaki because, let me think. So I was kind of juggling the idea. So like I could have drawn Masaki, which I ended up doing, or I could have done like Genshin characters. And the reason why I didn't do a Genshin like composition is that, one, a lot of my Genshin art that I want to make that includes the background, I rather have like a proper reference that is directly correlated with the game rather than coming up with like a composition, which you can totally do, which is not like, there's nothing wrong with it. But for me, I want it to be a little bit more like recognizable. But also the character detail of like outfits and stuff, I know I'll be too bogged down by wanting to like render them out when it's not really necessary in like a piece where a whole background is kind of included and the figure isn't exactly like the biggest thing in the picture. I'll put some examples here actually of like backgrounds I've done in the past, because I have a bit of experience, but a lot of them are like heavily referenced for the background, or I'm doing like my version of said photo. Like a lot of the times whenever I do like 17 art, and I feel like a lot of K-pop fan artists do this too, is that we tend to draw the picture, let's say it's like a selka of, I don't know, Mingyu, right? Usually we would just draw the same picture, but just in our style. So a lot of the times, like, you would be copying the background, try to make it look like, not like one-to-one, but like fairly similar, so like people would recognize the picture. But I think that's a good way to do studies too, which is why I feel like I have like a little bit knowledge of backgrounds, but still limited because I'm relying too heavily on a reference. So this exercise is very good, and the way Freeman approaches like landscape planning for a story, like storytelling, I think it's a good way to approach like even just finding references in general, because he mishmatches so many references and he explains why he uses certain references. Like specifically this one's for like the general atmosphere of the character, this one's kind of like the general atmosphere of the background, this thing he likes like the foreground elements, this one he likes the mountain shapes, this one's like specifically a rock shape that might be in the foreground. Like he makes it very deliberate, and like I like being able to see people's thought process like that, especially like if a person is teaching. I think it's like it's nice to see. But yeah, so I switched over to this Japanese brush, which I will not be able to pronounce, but if it's still available, I'll leave the link in the description. And it kind of has this angle. It's almost like straight up and down, but you can adjust the angle to whatever you like. So I was able to make a lot of these horizontal little, almost like swatches of colors going across. So I was trying my best to keep the texture more apparent, just because I know as as an artist for myself, I like making things look smooth and just like really round, because I think I have an affinity for like cuter things. And then when I look at landscapes, people have like much more of a painterly vibe usually. So I try to prevent myself from going too detailed in terms of making things look smooth and like fully blended, nothing's out of place kind of thing, by making a brush that kind of goes the opposite way, much more harsher edge. it goes sideways, and then yeah, it's kind of more like a marker feel almost. So I was trying to do my best to layer up colors in some areas and then leaving some larger shapes. For the mushrooms, like I pretty much got rid of the mushroom idea. I decided to add like little golden flowers in the foreground. And I talked about like the focal point thing. So I think it would have been better for me to somehow change the foreground, or even like shifted the background lighting in a different way so that your eye leads to Masaki first before trailing to the back. Because for mine, I don't think there's technically a focal point that's like that makes sense. Like your eye doesn't really get guided anywhere other than the center, but once you get to the center, there's like nothing there. So I feel like composition, usually I'm okay with just like objects and figures in a space that isn't too deep, if that makes sense. A lot of them that has to do with like full length backgrounds, or just like maybe even like a wider composition. I think it's hard for me to get the viewer's eyes to go into certain places. Yeah, I think that's like something I probably took for granted like when I was in my fine arts studying, because even like a few of my professors even told me like, oh, you have a good eye for composition, right? But a lot of them were for like figure studies, or like if we would have like a still life already made, like it was easy for me to find things that I find attractive, but apparently they were attractive because it had good composition. But making a composition I think is a little bit harder for myself anyways, so I'm just like mentally taking off things that I want to do a little bit more study. And like now that I'm not in school for quite a while, learning on your own at your own pace, it's a lot more fun, a little bit more freeing, because like you get to kind of sit down, figure out what you want to do and how fast you want to do it, and you can spend as much time or little time on certain things. So I'm definitely gonna probably, oh my god, his eye looks so wonky now. I'm definitely gonna keep going back and forth on the lessons, seeing what I can do to improve. Just like learning how to draw backgrounds. I want to try doing more, I don't know, like the thing is like natural ones I can kind of get away with. Like you can get away with like trees, grass, water, the sky, but things I struggle with is anything that has like more structure to it, like buildings. I don't know how to tackle stuff like that. Buildings, houses, anything that's more structurally there, or like even man-made maybe is a better way. So like pretend there's a boat in the background, I'm probably gonna be very lost with drawing it, which is like why you should use reference and try to learn how to use the reference that will help benefit you in your drawing in a way. Hopefully today's video isn't too boring. I didn't like, I don't know. I think in the final you'll see that I didn't spend as much time on Masaki. I actually left a lot of things unfinished and I forgot about it. I don't know if it's because I worked on him separately than the background, like on different sessions, because I did majority of the background in one session and then Masaki in a different session, and I didn't realize I actually didn't outline a lot of his like his apron or his pants, so it still seems very rough. From far away it actually doesn't like read too bad as long as I have the values in somewhat of a correct placement. But some of the things read like very flat and very weird. Like the berries I think read very flat. The basket does too. His apron doesn't make sense, and I don't know if I touch upon it anymore, which kind of makes me a little worried. But yeah, here's kind of like my attempt at doing a little bit more of a detailed background. Like I said, I've done backgrounds in the past, but I definitely know I'm lacking a lot. So hopefully with further studying and just like more drawing of backgrounds, I'll get a little bit more comfortable so that I can incorporate backgrounds into more of my illustrations. And maybe someday I'll like draw my OC's stories a little bit, maybe as one-shots or something, and I'll be able to, you know, have backgrounds that suit and fit the mood and all that. Yeah, here's Masaki in a little, kind of like a clearing almost, with a little pond or something where he's just chilling, eating, and taking a rest. Here's the grayscale versus the full color. But yeah, I think that's it for today. Once again, check out Wing Fox if you would like to look at different digital painting courses, digital courses in general, and all that jazz. And thank you again for Wing Fox for sponsoring today's video. but I will see you guys next time in the next video. Bye!